Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Super Dandori Bros Podcast, episode 16. We are your hosts. I am Leighton, and with me I have the illustrious Ryan.
That's me.
I still need to come up with some... I didn't add that to my notes. I said that last time, or one of the last times, I still haven't come up with a...
I think that... Isn't that a new one? I don't know.
It might be... Actually, it might be a new one, yeah. I should keep a list. So today we're going to talk about an idea that we've been kind of spitballing for a while, and that is this idea of... Now, Nintendo games have a lot of multiplayer, and actually Nintendo does like the idea of bringing multiplayer to different franchises and making their games more group-oriented, but I still think there's some franchises that either haven't seen some multiplayer love or could use an overhaul. And that's kind of what we're here to discuss, or, somewhere in that vein of just multiplayer ideas for Nintendo IP.
Yeah, I created a list of a few that I think are kind of interesting. And then sort of to lead it off, I also just want to briefly touch on what different kinds of multiplayer exist, which I think is a good place to start, if you'd be okay with starting there.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I think briefly there's sort of three general types of multiplayer. There's sort of PvP that pretty much everyone knows. This would be your Halo Deathmatch or a Team Fortress 2 or something like that. In Nintendo games, this would essentially be your Smash Brothers, right? Where you are directly competing against somebody else, and then of course there's co-op. And co-op would be in the vein of a Luigi's Mansion 3 or a Pikmin 3 Deluxe, where you're, working with another player, but you're still playing synchronously. And then there's sort of a PvP asynchronous, which I consider to be sort of a third type of multiplayer, where you aren't necessarily directly fighting another player, but you're more or less competing for doing well. So this would be your leaderboards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that you can sort of, when we're looking at the Nintendo franchises, sort of look at them and be okay, maybe this particular type of multiplayer doesn't work with this particular franchise, but this other kind will. So that's sort of the way that I ended up approaching this. I don't know if you happen to take sort of a similar approach. Maybe you didn't label it exactly the same way that I did, but maybe imagining different kinds. I don't know.
A lot of my games tend to... honestly, now I'm looking at my list, almost all of them are co-op based. So,
Perfect.
Which I think kind of fits Nintendo's style. Even though they have their competitive games like Smash Brothers, Splatoon, Mario Kart, Mario Party, I think that they do like to do games where you work together. Kind of like Snipper Clips was a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think there's a huge opportunity, especially as I see co-op games making a huge comeback right now and actually really rising in popularity. I think there's a huge opportunity for Nintendo to really hone in on that. So, but yeah, I have a few ideas, but I'll let you start with your idea because I think you've got some interesting ones.
Okay, so sort of the first thing that I was thinking of, which I feel isn't necessarily the most obvious way to implement this, is I want to start with Pokemon, actually.
Okay.
Because I played Scarlet and Violet, and then I've played, some of the, VGC, just regular Pokemon battles online. So I've played, both essentially PvP Pokemon and what is, I guess you could call PvE Pokemon. So Scarlet and Violet, in my opinion, had a pretty lackluster co-op mode. It essentially just served as an easier way for you to get people in lobbies for raids. That's essentially the maximal function that it served. And you could maybe trade easier. I can't remember. But largely there was no direct benefit really to having the person in your world. It's not like they could help you with tasks or new options really became available as a result of it. It was just oh yep, you run around together and you see each other. And so I thought it was actually kind of boring. And to be honest, it's sort of what I fear Mario Kart World might, end up being unless they show something, in the Mario Kart World Direct. This is being recorded before that, by the way, dating the podcast a little bit. But so my thought was a really great way to implement this isn't to do co-op like Pokemon battles, sort of like in the vein of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. I don't know if you ever played the co-op in that.
I haven't played the co-op. Actually, I've only played the demo, to be honest.
Yeah, it's my brother and I actually played through the co-op. It was fun. It's really easy. But here's what I would actually pitch. I think that Pokemon Legends Arceus was the optimal game to do that in.
Mm-hmm.
Because you run into a problem with turn-based games with co-op. And it's a turn-based game problem that you and your wife and my wife and I run into anytime we play Dice Throne together, which is that if you have to take turns in sequence, then most of the players are sort of doing nothing while, one person is deciding everything. And that's sort of the problem you run into with turn-based co-op is, if you, are, in a battle together, like someone's waiting on somebody else, or perhaps if you're like running around separately in the overworld and want to fight something together, then someone's got to wait for someone else to show up, something like that. So my suggestion is a lot of those Pokedex entries were like catch 50 of this thing or see this Pokemon use this move X number of times in the Pokedex. I feel like it would be a really like not technically simple to implement. I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that this is a simple thing to program, but just simple in gameplay concept that both of you just progress towards these tasks with the Pokedex at the same time. If they catch a Rattata or whatever, you also get credit for that, and you're essentially just both helping to work toward the Pokedex together. And then there's actually a tangible gameplay benefit to you both being in there. And a lot of the more tedious tasks get like churned through faster. And, you both can also just divide and conquer and say like, okay, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to try to find, this thing. And okay, I'm going to go over here and try to catch this Pokemon, like 10 of them or something. And I think that could make for a really interesting way to do co-op in Pokemon that hasn't been done before. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's actually seems pretty simple overall. I mean, obviously, the harder technical part is just getting everyone in the same world and the world not crashing. But the idea of it just being like a shared quest, objectives essentially, makes a lot of sense. It kind of reminds me of when we played Dark and Darker a little bit. How when we were as a team, we'd go into the dungeons and like it would. If we as a group all got a hit on something, like we all got the credit for the kill kind of thing. And so I could see that doing something like that with Pokemon. Another thought that crossed my mind, and I think this is probably sacrilegious for Pokemon people, but I'd be curious to know your thoughts on it, is altering the way battles take place. Instead of it being turn-based, turning it kind of more like Xenoblade style, where it's just kind of all happening. So the Pokemons have like they have default attacks, but then you can kind of control them and tell them, move them around, kind of like what ZA looks like it's going to do, where you move around, but then have them just basically like have cooldowns on all the attacks. And I mean, you can still do maybe the strong attacks have really long cooldowns, or they still have Pokemon power. So even with the cooldowns, you still only have so many uses of a move. But that way you can everyone could be actively engaged in a fight versus it being like, oh, because it's turn-based, we can't really all join in. It's just be a pain in the butt. But this way, if you have like a raid of 4 people or something and everyone has their Pokemon out and it's all just happening live.
Yeah, it's funny because not quite, but it's sort of like what the Scarlet and Violet raids are like, where people can sort of just attack at whatever pace they sort of want to. Like they still have to sit through the animations and stuff, so it largely does still go according to turns. But if someone's just sitting there like not doing anything, like they will get skipped. Like I've gotten skipped before. And so ultimately, like I think it would be a really interesting implementation of the game, and I feel like something like that would have to happen in something like a Legends game. Which I feel is in some ways like their testing ground for new ideas.
100%. And just a buffer game for between the mainline ones.
Absolutely. But I think it's sort of like where they can be a little bit more creative with it, which I really like. Hence why I think Legends Arceus is the best Pokemon game to come out, easily within the last decade.
100%.
And it's pretty much no contest. I think the only one, I can't remember exactly what year it came out, but the only one that might give it a run for its money is Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Like those are really good games. But aside from those, uh, like I would be definitely open to it. So I think largely like when it comes to, a lot of these ideas for, like trying to change Nintendo game, and you saw it with my Metroid pitch from a few episodes ago. Like I'm just sort of open to trying things because I think it sounds interesting at least. And Nintendo largely does try new things with each subsequent entry, and sometimes they keep stuff, sometimes they don't. And like for me, it's because they are like their primary goal is to deliver a unique gameplay experience that sort of promotes the idea of experimentation in each new game, like giving you an opportunity to test something new, sort of like how Ochi was new in Pikmin 4. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and I was skeptical of Ochi when I first saw the trailer. I was like, oh, this seems like some really weird gimmick, or I didn't really feel comfortable like with where they were going with Pikmin 4. And now that I've played it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I could go a new game without Ochi. Like Ochi has to be in all future games now.
Specifically Ochi too.
Oh yeah. Can never be a different dog. No, it probably will be, to be honest.
Probably, or at least some Ochi substitute.
Yeah. It's
all right. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I wanted to kind of tag a little bit on what you were talking about with Pokemon, because your idea is kind of transitioned very well into my idea, which was, and this isn't like a new idea. This has been, passed around forever. This idea of having a Pokemon MMO. Mm-hmm. And I think just a lot of the things you just talked about as far as what they adding to Pokemon just all kind of fit really well with the idea of a Pokemon MMO. And maybe it doesn't have to be MMO on like a massive scale, even though that'd be cool. Like it could be smaller servers with a certain number of people, but honestly, if you're going to run a dedicated server, you should probably fill it with as many people as possible. But I just think that'd be kind of like a blend of the mainline games, but with new controls, like new way. Like you said, you get together with teams of people, you have shared objectives, and you're all out doing that. And then raids, again, you're all fighting together, kind of MMO style. And, and as far as like legendaries go, I have no idea how they'll handle that other than the same way they do in Pokemon Go, maybe. But I mean, Pokemon,
where everyone just gets one.
I mean, Pokemon Go basically is their MMO, but I think like people are itching for like an actual game where you get to like, and I mean, talk about like a great model for them, because they kind of struggle to constantly make new games. If they just had one really good game, kind of like Fortnite, right, where the basis, the the engine and everything just kind of works, and all they have to do is just iterate on that by just constantly adding additional content, which is kind of all they're really doing with a lot of these new games anyway. It's hard for them to just rebuild a whole new world, where they just kind of took all the worlds that they've made so far and all the Pokemon, and then just added new Pokemon and add new maps when they were ready. But the game's still running, and they just kind of have events, and they have things going on, and people are just in there playing it, kind of like World of Warcraft type thing. Like, to me, that almost makes more sense, because then, yeah, they should be able to handle all the bug glitches, because they're just running everything in the same graphics engine forever. Maybe they'll just use Unreal. Just go get it over and done with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds like a really cool idea, specifically because you mentioned like World of Warcraft and how they had like each expansion. I'm not suggesting that each one should be a paid expansion. I'm not suggesting any way to monetize this or not or whatever. That's sort of not what we're like focusing on with this. More what we're focusing on is sort of like the gameplay ramifications. Mm-hmm. And I think it would just be really cool to have like, you play through Kanto, like let's say they release Kanto first. You play through the entirety of Kanto, you beat the gyms, whatever. They do whatever they have to sort of pad out the experience and make it, more or less filled with, enough quests and content and whatever to, make it feel like an experience that can, last for a considerable length of time. And then, like 6 months in, they release Johto, right? Sort of like they do with Pokemon Go, where they add new Pokemon, but they just add new regions periodically. And they don't necessarily have to go in the order of the Pokedex. I mean, you could. But I think it would just be like such a cool idea to allow you to just go back and re-explore these places again, and be able to do so all in the same game. It's probably in some ways a bit of a pipe dream because Pokemon makes a ton of money as it is, But at the same time, like, you mentioned Fortnite as being like a big money maker. I don't know, like, would this end up making more money or not? Like, that is beyond my uh, ability to predict
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. But I could envision that. I could also envision that they just keep doing the same thing that they have been doing, and that technically works better. I don't know. That's sort of my thought on it.
Yeah, I just feel like it lends itself to a live service game because it kind of is almost like, because I mean, it's been turned into this, like, for a while there, it was like every 2 years you're getting a new mainline game with new
Hmm.
Pokemon and new stuff. So it's like, just turn that into like and then, with the way they've been doing different uh, variants of the Pokemons and there's different evolution types. I mean, there's so much there, and they could just kind of trickle that out for a while. But then as they're doing that, they're also working on additional new ideas that will eventually hit, the game once, because they basically, the Pokemon Company, they do make money from the games, but most of their money comes from merchandise and brand stuff, like all the stuff outside of the games. The games only make like 10% of their revenue. So really, if they just came up with a live service game that just constantly is integrated with everything that is Pokemon, right? And you just go out there and you can catch tons of Pokemon, and you're incentivized to play with other players, and there's new content trickling out all the time, new Pokemon, new worlds, new maps, new events, right? Because you can have like raids, you could add Team Rocket and do some crazy stuff with that, or other teams from different games, or create a brand new one. You could create some kind of division, but different, like in Pokemon Go, you have the three different. Why am I blanking? The
Yeah, it's like teams like Valor, Instinct, and
Yeah,
Mystic.
yeah, and so you could do something like that. So then there's like sometimes there's going to be like, tournaments that go on, right? I mean, there'll still be like gyms and Elite Four, and there could be their whole ranking system inside the game. I mean, like, it's endless possibilities, but it kind of keeps the Pokemon brand alive all the time without getting the
Hmm.
reputation of being this glitchy mess. Because ideally, they should be able to refine it over time so that it's just a, kind of, again, like you look at Fortnite, it runs pretty well from what I hear. I mean, it's been around for so long, and it's just they've ironed out everything, and they just keep throwing stuff at it, and it just works.
Hmm.
I would just love to see Pokemon not have to constantly reinvent itself every 2 years with a whole new world and mechanics and Pokemon, and like it's fun. But what's happening is that they're, in order to keep their brand relevancy, they're pushing themselves too hard. So I think just having something where it's like, hey, we don't have to literally rebuild the game every time. We can literally have a world that's just persistent.
Well, and I also think that it in some ways says a lot about the current state of Pokemon, that a live service version of it seems like a more appealing option than the current state of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, that's kind of wild,
it is
because,
wild.
like, largely most people don't like live service games, and like they would say no, never make franchise XYZ a live service game. But like in this case, you could argue like, well, it's like running so poorly, and like there's so like little content, even though they like try to make it seem like there's a lot, that you almost would feel that a live service in some ways would be a better option. As unbelievable as that might sound, like, normally I would say no, but like you're right, like it does seem like, at least they would most likely run better if they're not constantly reinventing the wheel all the time.
And it just creates a much more social environment in Pokemon because people are meeting up in the game. They're collecting Pokemon, and you can make it like almost Animal Crossing esque too, where there's like a sense of like, obviously, like getting different. You could have your own place in the game or something, and you have different outfits, and you're collecting different Pokemon. Your Pokemon can have different outfits. Like, you could go so deep with this, as far as like there'll be people that will just focus on one aspect of the game and nothing else, and there'll be other people that are just grinding to be like the top of the rankings, and you have another person that just is a collector. And so you have all these different types of people, and it's the exact same thing that happens with Pokemon now, right? But at the same time, it would just, create a bigger like social scene. I'm sure there'd be people streaming it all the time. It would just, I think it would go way bigger, because despite like Scarlet and Violet, like you look at the sales numbers, you're like, oh, those are pretty reasonable, right? That's still like 20, I think like 26, 28 million copies sold. Uh, it's still like kind of small comparative to some of the other games they've sold. I mean, Sword and Shield still sold better. Um, but I don't know. I mean, it's just an idea, and I think at some point they may consider it. But I think for now, you're right. They're probably just going to keep doing what they're doing because it's probably, if they can barely get those games running, starting a live service game sounds probably like little hell. So
yeah, probably.
But anyway, I think that's probably good, unless you have more to add to
that's
Pokemon.
Enough Pokemon.
Yeah, we covered a lot of Pokemon. So, yeah, so I was kind of piggyback on that. I'll let you start a new one because I think I kind of added my piece to that.
Okay, sure. So, because we have to get the obligatory mention out of the way in every episode, I think we should talk about Star Fox.
Oh, I did not have Star Fox on my list, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
So, obviously, like, Star Fox has had PvP since time immemorial, but we've never really, to my knowledge, had, like, a good co-op option with Star Fox. And I actually sort of have two ideas here. One that my wife came up with, and I'm surprised that she came up with it before I did, because this is something, like, her idea is like, oh, wow, I've actually been wanting that for a long time, and I didn't realize how good of a fit Star Fox could be with that. But the one that I originally came up with was essentially like a parallel on the rails shooter. And so, like, what that more or less means is, like, if you could imagine, Star Fox 64, but you have two R-Wings in the same plane, like, you sort of deal with the collision problem where you might run into each other or just face through each other, or, if you have one slightly in front of the other, then, one person could shoot the other, or it just goes through them, whatever. Either way, it doesn't look particularly great presentation wise, or doesn't play great, one or the other. So instead, what I'm proposing is that there are essentially two routes through the level that sort of kind of run side by side, and sometimes they deviate from each other and you have to survive alone, and sometimes you come together. But, like, shooting obstacles in one causes things to happen in the other. So if you could imagine, like, going through Corneria and, like, one person shoots a building and the building falls in front of the other player, but maybe it explodes and reveals, like, a bomb pickup or a ring or something like that, where one person, accomplishing stuff in their level essentially can help out the other player, and, like, enemies will cross from one into the other. So if you, like, miss an enemy in yours, then you have a chance for your friend to pick it up, something like that. I feel that makes for a pretty non-intrusive Star Fox experience in terms of, like, oh, I was trying to shoot that enemy and now I can't, or, bumping into each other or something like that. So that is how I would sort of pitch doing a co-op Star Fox. I don't know if you wanted me to pitch the other idea before you comment, or what do you think?
Just to clarify, so they'd be taking different routes.
It's essentially different routes, yes.
Yeah.
But they'd be sort of parallel.
Because my thought was, like, as you were saying that, I was like, okay, my first thought was, because there's certain levels where you're forced to play in the Landmaster, and they're still flying up above you. And I thought, well, what if the co-op was just, like, each level has, you can be either on land or in the air, and I guess you just have to take turns, kind of like, and so that's just, that way you're not really dealing with collisions and you're each getting a different experience. So it's kind of similar to what you're saying with the different routes, because you are getting a different viewpoint, but you are kind of cooperatively working together. So if I'm up high, I'm, like, taking out certain aerial stuff, but then there's certain things on the ground that are shooting me, and, like, I have a harder time hitting the stuff on the ground, so I need you to take out the stuff on the ground. It's like certain objectives, right, that keep each other alive.
That sounds great.
So
it's not quite what I was pitching, but it's sort of the same spirit of it.
It is exactly the same spirit of it, but I think it kind of makes a little more sense in universe, because I think definitely having two R-Wings in the same route would be just a nightmare, unless the game basically had this anti-collision thing where it automatically animates you to do a dodging roll, and then they say a dumb line of, like, watch where you're going, and who taught you how to fly, or something like that. And
absolutely. That would absolutely be one of the lines.
You're as crazy as your father. But, something like that. Or, like you said, just completely different routes. But I think if you're going different routes, but kind of because at the end of the day, like, then are you really playing together? You're kind of in the same, I don't know. Like, unless what you're doing affects the other person, it's not really cooperative. It's just playing the same game, but not together. I don't know.
Like what I was pitching was more or less like what you do in yours affects the other person's level as well.
Yeah. So if there's for example, there's times where certain enemies get past you, they might go after, like, your allies. Well, I think that is the same thing where you see, like, a cluster of enemies. If you shoot them with a bomb, now you don't see them because I shot them all down. and so they're kind of
Yeah.
going back and forth. Or, I don't know. I think what would be really weird though is when it comes to boss fights would be tricky. If like you, because like you do, I guess you could do all range mode in that, and then maybe you can kind of just try to not hit each other because you have a little more control. I don't know. There's different ways they could do it. I like the idea though. I mean, Star Fox co-op. The other idea I had was because you never played Star Fox Zero,
No.
is kind of like this idea of having like a pilot and a gunner, and kind of Millennium Falcon Star Wars style, where it's like one person's piloting the ship, the other person's kind of got like a turret that they can move, kind of like how the gamepad was kind of like that, where you just move around and you just aim, but the lasers weren't exactly shooting straight out of your ship, they were shooting out of multiple different directions, almost as if you had a turret. I almost feel like the game was designed to have co-op in that regard, but just was really weirdly implemented because you do everything from the gamepad. Maybe there's a control scheme where I never did co-op, so maybe if there was that option, I don't know. But point being is that like that would be a way you could do some kind of co-op where you're not technically doing the same thing. One person's flying, but you could kind of build the game around that where like there's kind of incentives for you to do certain acrobatics. So the flying part's kind of fun, even if you're not shooting people. And then you have, because you're trying to get more bombs. You're also trying to upgrade your shields and your laser. Maybe there'd be some other incentives for you to do certain acrobatics and to dodge, while the other person's of course just literally being like shoot people, just aim and shoot.
Yep.
And
in that way it almost is like a Mario Kart Double Dash.
Yes, yeah, but maybe a little more fun.
Yeah, a little bit more fun. That actually is the idea that Katie suggested, and like I've wanted, like for the longest time, like what would essentially be sort of like a Star Trek-esque game. Like Star Citizen sort of does this a little bit, which I played with a mutual friend for a while. And as broken as that game is, like there are certain elements that are quite fun, and actually that did work pretty well. And so I could totally see them implementing that, not necessarily for like really large ships, but yes, for multi like person, like a 2-person fighter, and like maybe it's like a Fox and Falco like team up or something like that, or like Fox and Crystal, or like you have one of the characters, like two of the characters that are just in the game already, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, random idea that just popped in my head, because you know how you maybe don't remember, Star Fox Zero also had a little side game called Star Fox Guard, I think it was.
Nope, I literally know nothing about this game.
It was like a little mini game. They actually showed a tech demo of it way back on the Wii U, and it was like basically like this. I don't really like calling it Five Nights at Freddy's, but basically you're controlling a bunch of different cameras. You have this access to all these different camera screens, and you're trying to. It's I guess a better way to put it is more of like a tower defense game. But you're trying to set up all these different defenses, but there's all these robots trying to come in. You're switching between cameras, and you're shooting them down, and you're trying to, basically defend your base. So my point with that whole thing was just that Nintendo is willing to try weird, wacky ideas with the IP. Well, another idea that came to my mind is this idea of like you're actually like some minions or robots or something on the Great Fox, and so your goal is to basically just support the Star Fox team. It's just a side game. Like this isn't like a main game. I'm just talking about like as an add-on, but it can be cooperative. But like the idea of like, okay, Falco got too beat up, so his ship flies in, and now you got to start repairing his ship, and there's like different things you're having to work on. This would actually be a really cool VR game too, actually.
Yeah, that actually sounds like it'd be really fun. It's essentially like a Star Fox like car mechanic simulator.
Yes, basically. But it wouldn't just be like that'd be like one of the things you can do is like obviously like repairing ships to keep the battle going, but also like you have to like, hey, the engines are out, go repair the engines on the ship, right? Get the shields working, or divert power to the lasers, or just do like crazy stuff. So you're kind of managing the ship of the Great Fox. Yeah. So while there's all this chaos going on outside, you're actually in the ship, and it can be like up to 4 players all cooperatively, kind of like Sea of Thieves, I think, where you're all running around the ship doing different things to get the ship moving. It's like that, but on the Great Fox.
Yeah, that'd be phenomenal. I would play the heck out of that.
I just think that'd be so fun. Like I know like some people I want Star Fox, and trust me, I'm a diehard Star Fox fan. I want literally just a clean cut Star Fox game. Honestly, I'm just excited for Star Fox Assault because I know that game's about as close to a next-gen Star Fox game as we've gotten. On for the GameCube and classics. But but I love the weird, wacky ideas Nintendo comes up with, and I would absolutely play the crap out of like some weird side game as long as they treat it like that and not like a mainline like $70 game.
Yeah, absolutely, and like I think sort of the subtext of all of this is that we absolutely want like as Nintendo fans, more of the same great stuff that we've been getting. We also think that there's some there's some opportunities for some cool new stuff in addition to that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're pitching in that particular case.
Oh yeah, because honestly, like, I love what Nintendo's still doing. They're still innovating. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom was kind of crazy, all the things they managed to add to a Breath of the Wild game, and then Donkey Kong Bonanza looks phenomenal. I never would have thought of them making an open, I shouldn't say open world, but a very large map where you literally everything's destructible, or Mario Kart becoming an open world game, and goodness knows what they're going to do with the other franchises. So I love to see what kind of weird ideas they come up with. So but yeah, I love Star Fox. I love all this idea. I want all of it. Nintendo, please.
More Star Fox,
more
please.
Star Fox, please.
Okay. Star Fox out of the way.
Okay.
We can continue with the podcast.
Okay. Do you want to hear another one of my ideas?
Yeah, I want to hear.
Okay. So this one is the obligatory Pikmin reference now. And
okay.
I feel like we've kind of talked about this. I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast or just offline, but I just would love the idea of a Pikmin co-op survival base building mechanic where like it's kind of, how do I put it? Like, I don't want to say like Pal World, but I'm trying to think of other games similar where you're kind of you're working together to build a base to kind of survive, because you got to survive the nights, basically.
Yeah, it's like a 7 Days to Die or like an Ark Survival Evolved sort of thing.
Exactly like that, but with Pikmin. So you're like literally you're stranded, and it's not you don't just get to fly up and avoid everything. You actually have to figure out how to survive on the surface at night. So you're like trying to build defenses. You're trying to build, obviously grow more Pikmin, but it's all co-op too. So like you can be going in different directions and like collecting different resources, and then it'd be kind of cool because now like they kind of introduced a little bit of resource collecting in Pikmin 4, but it's just like a generic resource that just, they use for everything. But I like the idea of just there being multiple different resources. So like maybe they're collecting the mud type substance, but they're also collecting wood, and they're also collecting or I don't know, scraps of metal, and like it can all be turned into things. And
like copper and whatever, and like you use the rock Pikmin to mine the copper or something, and then they carry it back, sort of thing.
Yeah, so
maybe it's not necessarily copper, but like you would need that for electrical stuff, and and like you would need sparklium to power stuff, so you need to go find like actual treasure.
Yeah, so just like but you're building this base to the point where like, and it could still have Pikmin 4 aspects where you actually are rescuing people, and then they help your base, and they're like, but you could also, it would be interesting because you could have certain Pikmin that you are allocating to do resources at your base while you're out and about. So you have to be like very strategic about what Pikmin you take with you. And I think it'd be interesting too, with it being more survival focused, and make it a little harder to get Pikmin.
Yeah, this is what I would essentially, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that way you have to really like strategize optimizing your Pikmin, because if you take too many with you, you're getting less done because if you can just collect Pikmin easily, then that never becomes a problem. So it needs to be like challenging. You have to really like sit there and be like, okay, do I want to take these Pikmin? They're like really helping me here, but they'd be super helpful in the field, or vice versa, right? You're trying to optimize your Dandori.
Absolutely. This is sort of what I like imagine, like when you and I had that private conversation of like, what would Pikmin's Breath of the Wild be, and not in this from the standpoint of take Breath of the Wild and cram Pikmin in it, but more like what is the way in which you reimagine the series and totally change it that still keeps with the spirit and keeps a lot of like the great stuff about it, but adds a lot of new stuff to it. And this is sort of like along the lines of where the base building discussion came up. But I think like what you've done to like expand on that, I like makes it like I would play the heck out of that. Like that would be great. Like especially the co-op aspect of it, though I do like in some ways the isolated like single player experience of it, but I think you can still have that if you make the world vast enough and you make the resources sort of limited enough that you do have to increasingly go further and further out of your way to try to collect what you need.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those games like most you can play single player. You can technically play Minecraft single player. You can play, 7 Days to Die single player technically, can't you? So it's like it's just harder and less fun, but I guess I don't know. But I mean, it depends on in your play style and your I think the game would have to have some level of difficulty that ramps up with every additional player that joins.
Yes.
But again, I just love the idea of like, and you're just noticing a theme of co-op, right? It's this idea of like constantly like, but I love the idea of Pikmin is very RTS kind of like, but I don't want to go full RTS, but I
No.
do like the idea of just, again, more Dandori, more things to manage, more like, and again, I really love the kind of entry idea they came up with Pikmin 4 of this base that was being built and all these characters showing up, but they never really like evolved on that. And I kind of saw what
Yeah.
they did with Animal Crossing and how they went from like you kind of had some say in your town to like no, you literally get to terraform and design your whole map, right? That was like the big evolution of making it more. I don't want to say Minecraft, like more like a Stardew Valley kind of esque, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's what I kind of want to see with Pikmin, where it's like no, you actually have more effect on the world, and it's not like this is just the linear progression of how the game's going to go. It's like no, your base might look completely different than my base if we were playing different save files, right? There's no rhyme or reason why this would be built here, this would be built here, other than you're given an X amount of space to work with. And so and you can do things like expand, like you can't just build anywhere. The idea is that you still have to work within this zone of safety that you kind of have, and you can build things that kind of expand it. Kind of like in StarCraft, I use pylons for the oh gosh, I'm every time I say this stuff and then I completely forget the Protoss.
I can. Yeah.
I played StarCraft a lot when I was younger, but I haven't played in a long time. So
Same here.
it's just I think that'd be super fun.
Yeah, that'd be phenomenal. I would absolutely play the heck out of it. Would love to see Nintendo attempt it. It wouldn't surprise me if Pikmin 5 does have at least some component of base building, because like you said, we are sort of trending in that direction. It was obviously the best-selling Pikmin game. And I feel like, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think that may be like the trend that we're observing is sort of going to become their survival franchise. And there were sort of like two franchises that could have become that. One of them, was Pikmin. The other one was actually like Animal Crossing, weirdly enough. But I just don't think it's too family friendly to go like full survival.
It's too cozy.
So yeah, exactly. So it's not quite there. Though ironically, it does have the crafting that you would sort of expect from a survival game. So they did still take some elements from it. But perhaps that'll be unique to New Horizons, and when they eventually come out with the next one, perhaps it'll be something different, or perhaps they'll keep it. I don't know, but yeah, I think that that's a phenomenal way to implement co-op, sort of in a way that we haven't seen before, and in a way almost akin to the way that like Pikmin 3 did it, where you would go out of your way to to collect like fruit and have to obviously there's not base building in that, but use different captains to get to like to solve, or like use multiple captains to solve puzzles, and you sort of would have to like divide and conquer. Less so obviously in Pikmin 4, where there wasn't really a co-op,
No.
and you could just like go anywhere by yourself.
Yeah, I think that, and again, I think the game will be built with the idea that you can play it single player, but you look at the way Nintendo's marketing game chat, it just makes me feel like they really want to make it so that you can do these co-op experiences. Like they showed a video, I think it was a Treehouse, where they were doing Four Swords together, and you could see each other's screen, and I'm not the GameCube one though, the Game Boy Advance one.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I wish.
I was like, oh no, this is interesting to me.
Yeah, but it had each one of them screen sharing, so even they're all working cooperatively, and so you could see where each of your friends were while doing a 4-player co-op game. So I'm like, okay, that brings up some interesting ideas, right, of what you could do. Obviously, the screen sharing is like super low quality, but like it works well enough for like just visually being able to see where each other are at. And of course, like I've said before, I think it's going to get better over time. They'll find some new codec that's going to, or do something to optimize that over the time, or that our Switch 2 OLED or Pro version will come out and optimize even better. But point being is like, I think that Nintendo wants to do more of that kind of stuff. So I could see it where you're like playing Pikmin 5 and like, yeah, you're on one side of the map and I'm on the other, but we're screen sharing. So I can see like, oh, you're over there, or I can see that, you're getting murdered over there. So I'm like on my way to help you. And, or you're like, hey, come get this item. I don't have enough Pikmin. So I come over with my Pikmin and you show me the item and you pin on the map, but you also show me in the screen sharing what to look for. Like, I don't know, it's obviously like that kind of cheesy, like, oh, look, this is how it will work in a perfect world. But I think that's the mindset of Nintendo right now, is that the idea of like, hey, let's make this even better. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I'm like trying to like say it enough that maybe it'll become true. I'm almost convincing myself it's already happening.
You just manifest it into the universe.
Oh man, if I could, I would. So, all right.
Do you mind if I then transition into my Pikmin?
Yes, absolutely.
Suggestion? Okay, so it's nothing new. This isn't like a novel suggestion, but I think that it does hit on one of the forms of co-op that I mentioned, which is the PvP asynchronous. So what I would love is obviously like essentially a Mario Maker, but for Pikmin, with Dandori challenges. Like that's more or less, what I think would be a phenomenal way to implement, a competitive multiplayer in Pikmin that isn't directly the Dandori battles. So those are obviously fun, and you and I have played quite a few. Doing, having the Dandori challenges and be able to sort of change them up a little bit. My understanding is that from people who have looked into the way that Pikmin 4 is built, it is apparently very modular. And that's sort of how they designed their levels, in game, is they sort of made their own level editor and, sort of assembled it that way. And so, thinking about that, if we were to gain access to this, let's say they, gave us essentially a light version of it, in kind of like a Mario Maker, I could see, Arlo's talked about this for forever, but it would, it would essentially give, endless replay value. But then also you could have, like weekly, like Nintendo challenges of like, yep, this is the official Nintendo one. And it's literally like, they don't even need to make new maps. They could just sort of rearrange some of the elements in it and be like, oh yeah, we'll just swap out like these enemies for these other enemies. And, then it's like kind of a new challenge because maybe it changes like which Pikmin that you want to bring in, like what order you grab things or whatever. And so it would, in some ways, would almost be like a very low effort, for specifically continuing to make content for it, on their end, obviously like high effort up front to just get it out there working. But then like to maintain it and to keep content coming for it, like pretty low effort. It's, it would be like just, like perfect for streamers. And like, I think you could have like endless fun with it.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my like PvP asynchronous, and specifically tied to that would be like leaderboards, and that is more or less how it would become PvP.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
I think that's self-explanatory.
Kind of like like you said, like Mario Maker, right? Because isn't there leaderboards for levels, like for each level?
I assume so. I've honestly never played Mario Maker.
I have the first one. I've been considering buying this. The second one's been out for a while, right? But I've been considering just getting it because the kids look interested in it. But I think, that would make a lot of sense. So you can customize your own Dandori levels. I love the idea, like you can just rearrange other maps, but I would love the idea that you could fully like given a grid, and you can just add whatever elevation and elements you want and really build your own Dandori challenges. And of course, it's designed that like you have to be able to complete it yourself with a perfect score, or you can't actually submit it. So, that'd be, I don't know. I love that. I like the idea too, because it's a little more, actually kind of tracks a little bit better with what I could see them actually doing versus my idea, because it's a lot more simple, right? Because they've already got a lot of the resources already there. It's pushes user generated content, which I think Nintendo is also kind of interested in. And I don't know. I think that'd be super fun, because I mean, you and I both have been sitting there like, we want more Dandori challenges. There's just not enough Dandori challenges in Pikmin 4. It's actually, when you actually go to play through them, you realize just how few of them there actually are. It's kind of sad. And then same with multiplayer too. Like just the competitive side. Let's just touch on that real quick. Like, come on guys, like let's make that online. I want some Dandori battle, competitive Dandori battle. I want some tournaments, esports.
Yeah, that was, how funny would it be if that ended up being an esport?
Well, I told you how Coney, the streamer, he did one like inside of a Smash Bros tournament. He set up a Dandori tournament, and it was one of the most cool things I think I've ever watched. It was so intense. There was a couple levels where it literally came down to 1 point in like in 5 seconds. Like,
I need to sit down and like watch that in its entirety. I tried watching some of it and was like trying to do it while I was getting work done, and that's just not possible. Like, you really do have to sit there and like watch the whole thing.
yeah, and I mean, some of the matches are a little one-sided, but some of them, like some of the later ones, like the last one, I don't think was as exciting as like the one that was like there was a cup one, like a couple of matches before that one that was like super, like it kind of showed you just the potential because like the strategies they were employing, like, and it was kind of like there was these counter picking too. You could counter pick the map and what type of Pikmin you put on the map. So like there was this whole thing where like, yeah, because it was like whoever lost, I think, got to counter pick, like they could pick the match, the level and the Pikmin type. So you could kind of try to counter pick the other person's strengths and weaknesses based on how well you know them. So I just feel like the strategy and what could be done with that is just off the charts. It's just a shame it never took off. I don't think I've seen anyone attempt it since then. But
yeah, it's too bad.
I was like, this is hype. Like, someone needs to follow up on this. This is so good. But it just doesn't get the views, unfortunately, which is why it doesn't get done. So,
Yeah.
but you think Japan it would, though? Jesus, Japanese people love Pikmin.
Yeah, I know. It's like ridiculously popular over there. Please keep it alive. We need more.
Yeah, well, that's why Nintendo's making the Switch 2 cheaper over there. They're like, we need to keep you guys happy because you guys support Pikmin.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's probably most of the Pikmin. I've got, I've got two ideas I really wanted to pitch, but I'm trying to figure out if we.
I've got a couple that I want to pitch too.
Okay, I'm gonna pitch one more, and then there's the last one that I want to pitch, and this is like the last one's more of like an idea, but this one I have here is an actual game, and it's inspired by the people that make Split Fiction, and It Takes Two, and I think they made. One before.
Yeah, Hazelight.
What was
the studio is called Hazelight.
But what was the brother
but they made
one?
A Way Out.
A Way Out, okay. But I love the idea of that co-op, right? The 2-player co-op, and it got me thinking, like, what if you just did that but with Mario and Luigi?
Okay.
Like, I don't know exactly like the context of how you would play it out, but the idea of it just being like this 2-player platformer, not like Mario 3D World, but like more of like there's like, you know, these, again, similar, that these puzzles you have to solve, and it's in the Mario universe, and it's with Mario and Luigi. I don't know. I don't really know how to go further than that because I can't think of some of the ideas, but I just think that would be such a cool idea for co-op.
So this is actually one of my ideas, like, as well. Like, I actually,
Really?
This is one of my two. Yes. So I was thinking about this, and what would be kind of cool is, like, let's say that you had something like, like, let's say it was like Super Mario 64 or like Mario Odyssey or whatever. Mario Odyssey is probably a much better example because the like movement is very complicated. But let's say that you added like the bros moves from Mario and Luigi to it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're like essentially controlling them independently. Like, you've got two people that you can just get in sync. Like, I have a friend that I played Monster Hunter with, and we got to the point where, like, we knew what the other person was going to do. Like, you do just get in sync with somebody. And I could totally see that happening with, like, two really good friends playing Mario and Luigi. And it's like, you know, if you're, you know, Mario and I'm Luigi or whatever, and, like, you know, we're communicating, we know, like, oh, yep, we're going to use this bros move to, like, you know, let's say you form the ball and you get up this ramp, and, you know, and then you got to, you know, turn into the UFO or whatever from, you know, Brothership and like float around, or, you know, something like that. Like, you could make the movement, you know, complex and allow for like some really awesome like co-op moments, but, you know, have the freedom of a like, you essentially have like the, you know, hilarious animations and sort of the goofiness of Mario and Luigi, but in the Mario 3D like space.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of with that vibe, and I think that could easily be a win. I think it at least deserves somebody like to make a tech demo of that. You know what I mean? Like, just to try it out.
Oh yeah.
And see, like, does this even play well?
And definitely, like, because, and again, I haven't played Split Fiction or It Takes Two. It's on my bucket list of games to play. But from my understanding is each character plays very differently. They're not like identical people. So if you can do multiple playthroughs and each swap out which character you want to play. And I think that would definitely need to lean into that with Mario and Luigi. Like, give Luigi very unique abilities and moveset and the way he feels. Maybe even lean into some of the stuff like Luigi's Mansion-esque with the poltergust and stuff. And then Mario, obviously, like, I don't know, just hammer and fire.
Can you imagine if they gave him Flood back for that?
That'd be so cool, actually. That'd be really cool. Like, just like a game, like, I don't know. Imagine if they go through the eras, and it's like the GameCube era is like Luigi has the Poltergust and Mario has the Flood, and it's like this. I don't know. So yeah, that I think there's so much potential there. And there's the part where you're working together, but also parts where you have to like be kind of separate but affecting each other. And someone's unlocking something with their abilities while the other person's going through another part of the map. It's like, I think that, and Nintendo being Nintendo, they would come up with the most insanely cool puzzles. It's one of those games where like I would love them to do it, but obviously it would be hard for them to pitch a game where you have to play co-op, right? Because you cannot play those games single player. It's like literally impossible. There's no bot to run that.
Yeah, what it would essentially have to be is like you own one copy and a friend can play it.
Yeah, game share.
So it would essentially have to be a game share game.
Which apparently Split Fiction has that ability on Nintendo Switch 2.
That's good.
That makes sense. It
should. Yeah.
But it's cool to see third parties using that function too. I just assumed it was only Nintendo first party stuff, but the fact that there's a Switch 2 title coming out with game share is really awesome. So I'm glad to see that other people are adopting that, and hopefully that'll get other companies to want to do it. It'd be just cool if they get. So what was the name of the company again that made Hazelight? If they literally just gave them the IP, let them make it.
Just told them no cursing.
Yeah, just make it family friendly and clean, but like gave them the IP, and then like Miyamoto would just step in every once in a while just to give some feedback and like notes.
I'd love that. I think that'd be the funniest thing ever. I would play the heck out of that.
I mean, like they've done that before somewhat with Mario and Rabbids and stuff. I guess it's not like this would be more of like, it's not a crossover. It's like them literally using the franchise, but like they did Legend of Zelda Crypt of the Necrodancer type thing. So like it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just a matter of if Nintendo wants to partner with them and all that stuff. But Nintendo seems very open to partnering with third parties, or at least working with them with after FromSoft exclusive game now. So I think there's definitely opportunity there. So, and Split Fiction's done, so Nintendo just has to poach them now.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's so funny that we both came up with the same idea. I love that.
Yeah.
So that was one of your two ideas.
Do you want me to do my last one then?
Yeah, you do your last one, and I'll pitch my last one.
Okay, so here's what I want. I've touched on this before. I still think it would be too funny and just too perfect to not at least flesh out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I would love to see is similar to this Mario and Luigi game that we've just pitched. I would love to see Wario and Waluigi get their own like buddy game. But what I would want is it to be just a very goofy like Tomb Raider style game, but co-op. And they're essentially going into like crypts or solving puzzles. It's like a heist Tomb Raider sort of game where each of them has their own abilities trying to get, the gold or whatever. And it's essentially just comic mischief, and like Wario would have to like bend Waluigi into different shapes to get him to like do stuff, or like Waluigi's the only one who could like climb through the ducts, for example. And you could make it simultaneously hilarious while also like fun and interesting in the same way that you were like pitching like Mario and Luigi have their own like different playstyles. Like truly Wario and Waluigi are like two very different characters. Like Mario and Luigi are similar enough that they feasibly could play about the same, but Wario and Waluigi are so distinctly different that it almost makes sense for them to play very differently. And you could sort of do things in the way that the old like Wario Land games do, where like essentially like the way that you sort of progress through the level is like different, like transforming Wario in different ways based on enemies that you encounter or whatever, and you would essentially like incorporate those puzzle solving elements while making it co-op, and maybe they like do it to each other, and like that's the way that you pull off this heist, or pull off like raid this tomb, this crypt, like a pyramid, whatever. Like you could do all kinds of different settings, but it's essentially like giving Wario and Waluigi their own game for them to just be goofy and stupid in, and just be classic Wario and Waluigi. And they can be as destructive as they want without it like violating sort of the family friendly nature of it. It wouldn't necessarily be Wario and Waluigi GTA, though. To be honest, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I know that is less in line with what Nintendo typically goes for. What would be more in line with it is Wario's greedy, so they raid a tomb and there are like mummies and stuff, and like that's essentially my pitch for that. Is my new IP that I had, and that's based on an existing IP, obviously, that I had sort of talked about before with you, probably before the podcast started recording. So that's my idea. What do you think?
I think it's brilliant, though. It would be the first game officially for Waluigi that's not a sports game.
It is, and that's the important thing, right? You got to give Waluigi his own game.
Yeah, no, that'd be hilarious. I love the idea of putting those two together and really fleshing out that whole relationship and just the comic relief of them, working together, but also like butting heads and like not getting along and fighting, and which would cause different scenarios to play out. And I just think it could be really, really. I could really see that, especially with the way Nintendo's going with making their characters way more animated and way more like, I don't know, lifelike. It's like I could see them doing that where they really like just make this really goofy buddy, heist type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and you could just see like them pulling bob-ombs out of nowhere, and you could see Wario smashing, Waluigi with a hammer, or, like whatever, like doing all kinds of goofy cartoonish things like they do, in order to accomplish something that is more or less lighthearted, but fits in with their characters, which is just stealing stuff from like crypts or like a bank or something. Like, I don't know, like just you pick a setting and you just do that. Maybe they're stealing from Bowser. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that could be like the final heist, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're building up to different heists and like it just leads up to it. And who knows what the backstory would be? It'd be something goofy, like something got stolen from him, or if there's just a grudge vendetta, like they got betrayed by Bowser during some thing or whatever. I don't know.
How funny would it be if they accidentally save Princess Peach in the end? Like they think that there's a treasure in Bowser, like something precious within Bowser's castle, and they get to the end and it's actually Princess Peach, and they accidentally save her.
That actually would make a lot of sense. It'd be kind of hilarious. They accidentally became the good guys, and like the whole punchline is that Mario comes in at, like after the credits or something to save Princess Peach, and she's already the princess is literally in another castle with Wario and Waluigi.
That'd be the funniest ending. I feel like this game has to exist,
I think that'd be hilarious. I don't know who they'd get on that, but it'd be so fun.
Yeah.
Nintendo needs to just be buddy with more developers.
Absolutely. So that was my last pitch. So I'm curious to hear about your idea.
So my idea, and so I really want to hear. I should have done more research because I don't know if this idea already exists or not. But I don't know if it, so I'm going to bring it up. But I thought of this idea because like battle royale games are super popular, and the whole idea behind a battle royale is that like everyone drops in, only one person survives at the end, but everyone's trying to fight each other. And I got this idea from like a PvE kind of mindset of like, what if there's a battle royale, but the goal isn't to defeat each other? It's like there's this boss, and whoever defeats the boss first wins, or defeats a certain enemy, right? And it's not like where everyone's shooting at it and whoever gets the last shot wins. It's like your goal of the game is like to go and to level yourself up and collect as much stuff as possible so that you can go and face this boss and win, right, and defeat them. So it's basically a similar battle royale, but again, like not trying to fight each other. I guess it could be PvE where you could take out your opponents, right? You got to, because otherwise you might not be the one to defeat the boss. Is this something that already exists? Am I just crazy?
I'm not aware of anything in particular. There may be like some like random game on Steam or something, or some like third party game from like a couple generations ago that I'm not aware of, but I am not explicitly aware of that. A sort of like, as you're talking about it, what I'm sort of envisioning is like, maybe it's not necessarily like everyone shooting at the same boss or whatever, but what would sort of be kind of interesting would be like if you had different teams, like so in the way that you like maybe have different targets to take out on the boss, you could sort of implement that as like boarding parties on like a starship. So for example, so like let's say that you had like a bunch of Galactic Marines in like a Metroid like essentially battle royale game, and you were just like trying to fight through a space pirate ship, and like take out very specific targets within it. That's sort of what I would envision as like an equivalent of that isn't just like 100 people shooting at the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it actually makes a little more sense actually. Where the first to defeat all their targets wins, but like obviously each target has varying difficulty, and if you don't come in equipped, you just die. And if you die, you're out. Like it's a battle royale, so the goal is that. So technically, everyone could lose in this. Is there's not a guaranteed winner, though. I guess the winner could be just whoever defeated the most or survived the most. But I think ideally, like this is one of those things where like you're all in the same world, so it's PvPvE. I guess you could fight each other, but the goal is again still you could kill everyone on the map, but then you still have to defeat all those enemies. But I just like the idea of like, the thing that's fun about battle royales is the going around and collecting loot. Like you are defeating other people, but like you're trying to get to build up your arsenal and your abilities as fast as possible so that you're really powerful to go fight, other players. But I like the idea of doing that, but instead you have to do it as quickly as possible. So maybe like Metroid where you're trying to find all the power-ups as fast as possible and you're getting different ones. Kind of like the was that mod for Metroid where you're like they're all out of order power ups. So just doing that.
Oh yeah, it's like a randomizer. Yeah.
Yeah, but on a multiplayer level, where you're just basically like trying to find the different power ups, and then again you're facing each target, and like there'll probably be something on the marker like each target has a different color, so you know which ones are harder and easier. So you might go after your easy ones first. But you might get certain abilities from the easy ones, but not super great. They'd be like common abilities, and then there's like superpowers. So you have your common abilities would be like. Now you've got missiles, and now you've got your charge beam, and now you've got, I don't know, different things. And then your upper abilities are like the more powerful beams, the super missiles or ice missiles and power bombs. And then there's like super rare ones where it's like the Omega beam kind of thing, like, or Phazon, just like crazy, the overpowered stuff, right? And that's like super rare. And you're all trying to, I guess you could almost look at it like an extraction shooter, but not exactly. It's like an objective-based extraction shooter where you have to defeat. I guess that's kind of what Helldivers 2 is.
Oh, is it? That's a game I still need to play.
I play. It's kind of a similar thing. You have objectives and then you extract. So I guess that's kind of what I just pitched for Metroid. But it's not battle royale though. It's fully co-op. It's PvE only. Mm-hmm. But I think the idea of it being a PvP PvE where there are other players in the map. So and the biggest thing is like you might just take other people's power ups. Like at the end of the day, like you're not even killing the other player. It's just like there's less power ups for you. If you're not fast enough, all the power ups are gone, right? All the other people got the good ones, so you've got to be quick. Yeah, and maybe, and I don't know. There's so much nuance to this. So I said I pitched the idea. I hadn't picked the game. Metroid does seem like a really good idea. This is gonna sound crazy, but the idea spawned in my head was using Earthbound.
I mean, it does sound. I was trying to envision like what a co-op Earthbound would be like, but this is actually kind of interesting. Okay.
Well, it was just the idea of like instead of it being like, because like how do you do multiplayer, right? You could do co-op, but you can make it competitive, but you don't want just competitive against each other. But like the goal is you're just trying to like almost like speed level up yourself, right? So your XP, you get XP a lot faster and you level up because you don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours, but like you can level up your characters a lot faster, but you're collecting different things from the enemies you defeat. You're collecting different things from the things you find on the map. And then, then your goal is to just fight these certain, enemies on the map, which originally was going to be like you had to defeat the final boss. But I like your idea better of the objective one so that you have, and there's enough for everybody. But again, like the idea would be that it might be harder for you to get to certain objectives if other people get to the closer ones first and things like that. And there's ways you can hinder the other players. Maybe you could fight them, but it's risky because obviously you're going to lose health, which makes it hard for you to fight other things, especially in a turn-based RPG where like, at least with like a Metroid game, you can maybe just be a more skilled player with better aiming and dodging. But with like a turn-based RPG, like you have to be way more conscious of your resources because, there may be less healing items and stuff. And like, you just can't take the risk that you're going to take too many hits from other players. So it was, I don't know why Earthbound came to mind, but that was just something where like, it'd be such a wild idea to just have a bunch of people all in the same map in Earthbound, all like just trying to defeat, like their objective isn't to fight each other though, just to collectively win. I don't know, but
I mean, I would not mind an attempt at an Earthbound version of that, but I agree. I think that the Metroid sort of skin that we've put on it makes at least a little bit more sense gameplay wise. And then thinking about it, like you could sort of, in order to make a little bit more sense why you might be okay taking out another player, is instead of having it be Galactic Marines, like have you essentially just create your own bounty hunter. And it's like, and the Galactic Federation is like, we're at war with the space pirates. We need literally everybody that we can get, and this is a target that we need taken out. And we're sending literally every bounty hunter we have, because all of our, like we're spread thin, and we just got to rely on bounty hunters for this. And so then they send in, like 20, 30, bounty hunters at once. And so then theoretically you could take out, other people, and at least it makes a bit more sense than soldiers shooting each other. But again, it's like sort of like when we were playing Dark and Darker, and you would see, on like some of the players working together, even if they weren't on the same team, to kill, certain larger enemies, and then maybe they duke it out afterward. But you could sort of have those moments where it's like, okay, is this guy gonna shoot me in the back as soon as we're done? Like, that would actually be kind of an interesting, spin, like essentially an interesting implementation of a Nintendo, like IP.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting. I just think there's so much opportunity. It's just whether or not, Nintendo will try to always do their own version of it. So like we might have like our idea, but they'll take it and like do something really funky and different with it. The same way Pikmin is their funky version of RTS. And Splatoon is their funky version of a shooter, and they'll come up with something. Smash Brothers was their funky version of a fighting game, and Mario Kart's their funky version of a racer, and like they just have their version of everything. So it'll be just more Nintendo-fied. But yeah, so I think that was my idea. It was just I just loved. Again, it was like more of a concept than it was like a game idea, but I think the theme of a lot of, other than that one, I guess, but like a theme of a lot of my stuff was definitely co-op, because I think Nintendo's they have a lot of competitive games already. So I think the idea of them introducing more co-op, because that actually has been severely lacking in a lot of their games. They kind of did it for a while, like the Wii U with Super Mario 3D World, which is kind of competitive, but it was somewhat co-op. But then you had, in Pikmin 3 was co-op, but then Pikmin 4, it was not really. In Super Mario Odyssey, it wasn't really. Even the Mario Galaxy games technically had co-op, but it was like, again, it's just like this tacked on thing. So it'd be really nice to see more co-op style games. I think, especially if they can make them online, because I think that's, obviously I like the in-person stuff, but not everyone can do that. But Nintendo clearly is putting a focus on the ability to play online more. So I think that will be more of a focus, I hope. Not a promise, just a prediction.
Yeah.
So
hopefully.
Well, I think that's all that I've got. That was pretty fun. I love those ideas. I actually really liked a lot of the ideas we both brought up. Like, it wasn't just like something out of nowhere. Like, I think every single one of those, I'm like, I would absolutely play the heck out of every one of those ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like when we sort of come up with the idea for the podcast, and we sort of like assemble a list, and we're like, I don't know, like, this is gonna be good. Like, as we talk it out, we like sort of bounce ideas off of each other, and I can only imagine like what must go on in like Nintendo's like development teams, and like the kind of ideas that they've like come up with and actually just like tossed aside because they're like, well, it doesn't fit in this game, but maybe we'll use it in the future.
Oh yeah, they definitely keep it for sure.
But it'd be really interesting almost to like, if you could ever like be a fly on the wall and just see like, what exactly have they tossed around in the past. It would be very interesting.
What kind of shrooms are they on there?
I know, right?
Well, this has been fun. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it, and we'd love to hear any ideas that you have in the comments. If there's an idea you have, or just you just have feedback on some random idea we had, good or bad, we don't care. We'd just love to hear it. And yeah, well, thank you everyone for listening. This has been the Super Dandori Bros Podcast. I'm Leighton. He's Ryan, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye.
See ya.